Hi, welcome everyone to this session on sustainable and regenerative tourism in the Pacific, tools for making progress. I will go through, we have an hour and I will go through and introduce each of our speakers as it is their turn to speak. I will move quickly now. My name is Kate Brown. I'm the Executive Director of the Global Island Partnership. I will introduce our first speaker without further ado, who is going to help us frame this session. He is Simon Milne, a Professor of Tourism at Auckland University of Technology. He's also the Director of the New Zealand Tourism Research Institute and has consulted to a number of international organisations, including UNDP, UNEP, the EU, the World Bank, and the Organisation of American States. He currently also leads the Pacific Tourism Data Initiative, which supports the development of tourism decision support systems in 7 Pacific Island countries, and this will expand further in 2021. Simon, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for letting me be part of this session. I'm just going to share my screen with you. I'm going to be talking today to you a little bit about the theme here, sustainable and regenerative tourism in Pacific small island developing states. And I'm looking at tools for making progress with a particular focus on the need to think about evidence-based research to help create awareness and to drive change in the tourism sector. Everywhere that we look around the Pacific at the moment, and in fact around the world, we're seeing a focus on reimagining tourism, shifting tourism to a new way of being and doing, moving away from the challenges of over-tourism, environmental destruction, putting a focus on building linkages, getting more quality and benefit from every visitor, and also trying to link tourism more closely to community benefits and regenerative environmental outcomes. And these are great initiatives and great ideas. I guess the question I have to ask though is, are we perhaps just putting old wine in new bottles? Are we going to actually be able to sustain some of these ideas? Are we perhaps going to slip back to the way we were doing things in the past? And I'm going to just talk very quickly about some examples from the Cook Islands of how perhaps we can make sure that we don't go back to the old ways, how we can actually begin to generate evidence and indicators that can help guide us on the pathway forward, and also think about how we can learn from each other. And that's the theme, I think, of this session that I'm hoping to tie together a little bit. We've got cases, examples, great ideas from around the region that we can share with each other. I'm just going to be sharing some information, as I said, from the Cooks. That's part of our Pacific Tourism Data Initiative. It's really where this work started. This initiative is designed to gather visitor, business, and community data to help us understand from those 3 perspectives how tourism is performing and to create indicators that can help guide the development of the industry. That sits alongside with broader indicators, gross domestic product, water quality, biodiversity indicators, which are also incredibly important, but may sometimes be very costly or difficult to estimate. We're trying to create cost-effective ways to better understand and evaluate the performance of tourism. And I just want to give some quick examples of how this can work. This graph, drawn from the International Visitor Survey over nearly a 10-year period, shows the percentage of visitors that say that environmental quality was the least appealing aspect of their visit. And you can see there were 2 distinct peaks at exactly the same time that there was an algal bloom event in the Muri Lagoon on Rarotonga. So we're, in a sense, we're almost using visitors here as citizen scientists or barometers, people that can give us a sense of their own interpretation of environmental quality. And this has certainly been a very powerful tool to drive home the importance of environmental quality in terms of tourism management and development. We can also use good data to support the idea that we should link tourism more closely to regenerative activities, to marine and terrestrial environmental quality. This little bit of research simply shows that there is a quite dramatic difference between those visitors that undertake a large number of marine activities and those that don't. So we can actually begin to argue that if you sustain and develop more regenerative and marine type activities, you will be generating a higher yield visitor. So the value of the environment can then be ascertained. And this is work that we've been assisting with in the Cook Islands with partners such as Ridge to Reef and the Te Pukerea Society. By looking at the community dimension, and we've now run 2 national community surveys in the Cooks, and we're about to run a 3rd, we can begin to understand how the local people feel about tourism and its benefits or costs. And just here, I just want to highlight quite quickly that you can see, for example, in Rarotonga, there is a higher feeling that the industry is creating environmental damage than in Aitutaki, which has a lower number of visitors prior to COVID. If we look at the business sector, we can also see some interesting things. I just want to highlight this slide as perhaps indicating the challenge that we face as we move forward. This asks businesses over a period of nearly the last 4 years to tell us what are the major challenges they see coming in the next 5 years when the survey is actually conducted. And you can see over time, as the algal bloom problem was emerging, and we could see that through the visitor feedback, businesses also were really focused on the environmental challenges that they faced and the destination faced as they move forward. Once that bloom was dealt with and problems started to settle down, the environmental variable reduced. But post-COVID, you can see businesses have now put environmental issues way down on the back burner. On the other side of the coin, you can see that visitor numbers, growing visitor numbers, was not an issue for businesses during this period of over-tourism when the Cook Islands had massive visitor numbers. Since COVID, that focus has grown again. So this is the challenge we face. Businesses are aware, of course, that tourism needs to be sustainable, that we need to look at regenerative activities, but the challenge is that the focus as we come out of COVID is going to be on visitor growth again. We must find ways to maintain a focus on environmental quality, community way of life, and other dimensions. So all of this data, all of this evidence can then feed into sustainable development frameworks and policies, which can then link into national sustainable development strategies and sustainable development goals. We must have good indicators, we must have good data, and we must, as we'll see from the next speakers, have good case studies and evidence that we can learn from and share with others. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. And for those listening, if you would like to ask questions to our panelists, please do so in the chat or the question and answer section in the portal. We're going to move now to our next speaker, who is our featured speaker of this panel, and it's someone that I really admire very much, Palau's First Lady, Debbie Remengesau. She's won numerous awards and commendations for her efforts as chair of the Palau Legacy Project, which was founded in 2015 by Laura Clark, Nicole Fagan, Jennifer Koskinen-Gibbons, and Nanai Singayo, a group of volunteers who live in Palau and lived in Palau and were concerned about the impact of tourism on Palau's natural environment. The First Lady identifies herself as a mother, a grandmother, and homemaker. And in 2018, she became the first Pacific Region First Lady and the second Pacific Islander to receive the Crans-Montana Forum's Prix de la Foundation Award in recognition of her invaluable contributions and leadership in conservation and ocean stewardship for the future of Palau's children through the Palau Legacy Project and the Palau Pledge campaign. And the First Lady has kindly supplied a video, which we will now listen to. I think we'll just get this to restart so that we can all hear it. Rita, if you could do that.
My name is David Mosao. I'm a mother of four, grandmother of six, and a homemaker. I also have the distinct honor of being the First Lady of Palau and the Chairwoman of the Palau Plets. I'd like to start by thanking the conference organizers for inviting me to speak to you today. The subject of sustainable and regenerative tourism in the Pacific is very important now more than ever. So today we face extraordinary challenges. COVID-19 has put us in a huge pressure on global health care systems and economies. So in Palau, we're lucky to be COVID-free, something we are very grateful for. But being COVID-free has come at a price. In Palau, 85% of our GDP is tourism. And since we shut our borders to keep our people safe, our once driving tourism industry is now non-existent. This has put enormous strain on us. But there has been some positives. Our global environment has started to show signs of recovery, and this is encouraging. And it shows the resilience of Mother Nature. However, we still have the same tourism system in place and the same wasteful habits. So as the world takes pause, Palau is urging all governments and people to build back blue for our ocean and build back green for our environment. We need to stop and reassess our actions, then put our minds together to create a new future. We have that opportunity now. We have been given a chance and we need to take it. I think our ancestors had the knowledge we need to help us do this. If you look at how they cared for the environment, we can find answers that can guide us today. Like many Pacific Islanders, conservation is in every Palawan's DNA. Environmental stewardship is a fundamental part of our way of life. Today, I want to tell you a little about the Palau plates, why it was necessary, how it was developed, and how it's becoming a model for other destinations to protect their own biodiversity, environment, and culture. 3 years ago, we launched Palau Plates, a mandatory oath to Palau's children that all visitors must sign an entry, promising they will protect Palau for the sake of the next generation. Introducing the Palau Plates was necessary to help protect our pristine island paradise from destructive tourism practices while safeguarding our economic future. The Palau Plates program educates visitors on how to look after Palau and is backed by laws based on our culture, tradition of conservation. In essence, the Palau Plates is a modern interpretation of our cultural practices expressed in a way everyone can understand. Plates was developed in close collaboration with our community, from our Council of Chiefs and elected leaders through to our nation's children. It was important. The core of Plates reflected our traditional heritage and served the needs of the next generation. Since it launched, the Palau Pledge has been used a model by other countries and destinations. For example, Hawaii, New Zealand, the Philippines, and Finland have all announced similar pledges, all rooted in their own cultural wisdom. These pledges encourages people to think about their impact on the environment when they travel and show them how they can take action to reduce it. In Palau, we didn't just stop at the plates. For the last 3 years, we have been monitoring the impact of the work and developing new tools to help our local businesses and community further educate visitors on protecting Palau. This work includes the soon-to-be launched Palau Business Plates, which give us our private sector a range of new communication tools to remind visitors how they can keep the plates during their stay. This also helps businesses become more sustainable and provides endorsement to raise their profile with eco-conscious visitors worldwide. When the travel industry opens back, this scheme will be incredibly important in helping Palau distinguish itself as a destination while continuing to protect our most important tourism asset, our culture, and our environment. Additionally, Palau has recently announced it will be the world's first carbon neutral destination, helping visitors further reduce their impact on the environment. And we know Pledge is working. Pre-COVID, we saw evidence of people being more mindful how they interacted with Palau's environment and culture because they signed the pledge. We also saw preliminary research showing Palau's conservation initiatives were attracting eco-conscious visitors to our shores. We know these visitors are more likely to tread lightly on our environment, respect our culture, and spend more money in our local community. So encouraging them to visit Palau is very important to rebuilding our economy, especially in the post-COVID world. It's important to remember that all this work stems from our strong culture of conservation. Like other First Nations around the world, it is crucial we preserve our language and culture as it makes us more resilient to environmental strain and protects our biodiversity. It also safeguards our food security and provides a more authentic visitor experience, one that is sought after by eco-conscious visitor. In the tourism industry, we have a huge opportunity and a huge responsibility now to our planet and to our children. So today, on behalf of the children of Palau, I would like to invite you to use the conference as an opportunity to join together and help create the kind of world that will sustain our children and the future generation. We're all connected, and ultimately, we are all just visitors on this planet. Umal Masulang, thank you very much.
Thank you so much to the First Lady for that wonderful presentation and real inspiration and reminder of why we are all here and what we're talking about. So I continue to be inspired by her and all of the work that Palau is undertaking. With that, and as I said before, please put questions in the chat and the Q&A area in the portal. We're going to move to our next speaker, who is Melita Tokwakwasi from VilLink Tours and Expeditions in Papua New Guinea and Alatau, Papua New Guinea, which is where this conference was in person about 12 years ago. So this is very cool. She's from Milne Bay province and she's a tourism professional entrepreneur. After working in both the government and corporate sectors in the tourism industry, 5 years ago, she established her ecotourism business, which is VilLink Ecotours and Expedition. She's also was selected in the second cohort for the Tourism Professional Fellows Program in Hawaii and Washington, DC. She's really passionate about community-based sustainable tourism and is currently working with local communities to develop sustainable tourism activities, establishing markets and conserving the environment. She's also secretary of the Milne Bay Tourism Association, representing tourism industry stakeholders in the province. Melita, you have the floor.
Thank you everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to share our story. Yes, okay. So once again, thank you so much for the opportunity. My name again is Maleta Tokaposi, and I run a small ecotourism business back here in Milne province in Papua New Guinea. And I'm sending you all warm greetings from magical Milne Bay. So what I'll do is I'll just share with you what we're doing as a small tourism operator back here in Alatau, Milne Bay province. After returning from the short training program in Hawaii, I was challenged. I've seen mass tourism in Hawaii, and I was really challenged to come back home and do something different. So I did a total shift in how we operate as a business. I think the slide, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we decided to change the way we do business, and that is to promote go green activities, tourism activities. And so we were just grateful that we had a partner who came on board. And that was the Nature Conservancy. And they helped us to do awareness in the communities, to not promote, but to conserve the mangroves. So we discussed with materials, and we visited 3 communities in the province, and we did awareness on mangrove conservation and rehabilitation. So we train about 60 to 70 locals to help us spread the word in conservation work in the communities. So after that, we decided to then create those nature-based, we decided to create those project sites into nature-based tourism activities. So I will show you a short video on what we're doing. Are we able to show the video? Tourism as a platform to impact the lives of people. Through this tour program, we'll be able to take visitors to the project site where they can go through the mangrove forest, go on a boardwalk tour, and learn about the mangroves, the different species of the mangroves, why is it important to the communities, and volunteer to plant a mangrove before they go snorkeling and swimming at the nearby reefs, which totally depend on the mangroves as well.
the UMI program itself, in a nutshell, it gave us hope. And with what I'm doing, I want to encourage the other young women out there that they can also make a difference. Not only having the money, but sharing what they know and get more communities involved in the tourism industry. That is my dream or my vision, to see more women rise.
Thank you, Melita. I'm going to share the link to that video in the chat so people can also watch it. I know there was a little bit of technical difficulties with that. It's a beautiful video. And so it's shared in the chat on the portal. And thank you very much. Were you concluded? Very good.
Yes, so that's basically what we're doing to try and help promote sustainable tourism in the province, and we hope that we can replicate the same program throughout the country one day. So thank you again.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And as I said before, again, I've put the video in there, and I really encourage people to look at it. And we're going to move to our next speaker, which is Elihia Johnson, the Director of Communications with the Native Hawaiian Hospitality Association in Hawaii. And for the last decade, he's been working to advance Hawaii's sustainability policy, action and storytelling. He's been involved in open space purchases for conservation, local ordinances to ban the use of plastic bags, efforts to be smarter with municipal solid waste, national legislation to protect reefs and waterways, and developing energy projects in pursuit of the 100% renewable energy for Hawaii. He now works to move Hawaii's visitor industry, which Melita referred to, which employs hundreds of thousands of residents while hosting millions of guests a year, to a regenerative model that enhances communities and environments in the spirit of Malama. Elihia, over to you.
Aloha mai kako, e nā hoa ohana, nā hoa aloha, ma'oa o, moana nui a kea, aloha to all of you. Kate, thank you so much for the invitation to talk story with this group today. And it's an honor to be here amongst you all. Oh, there was one picture I wanted to show. As I was listening to First Lady Remengesau's comments, I reflected on this day when we had the opportunity to host President Remengesau on our island, on Hawaii Island. That's Mayor Billy Kenoi on the right and John DeFries on the left. He's gonna come up a little bit later in my presentation, but it was a great day, and it was the day we were invited to join the Global Island Partnership. So happy memories for sure. To set a little context about sustainable and regenerative tourism in Hawaii, I'd like to begin by telling you about my home. And I know we have limited time, so to borrow a line from a friend, this is gonna be 10 pounds of poi in a 2-pound bag. The genealogy of the Hawaiian people connects our existence today to prehistoric darkness, the earliest flashes of light, and the very first life forms to inhabit the land and the sea. And within the chant that reveals our origins, the relationships between living things are described in terms of how they care for one another, reminding us that we are connected to our universe and to every living thing in it. Our ancestors devised brilliant systems of resource management that sustained a population with no imports for so many generations. And I'd like to call your attention to the mountain in the back of this photo, because you'll see that again soon. And in our culture, we care for travelers who pass us by. It began with the sweet call of "hooey" to a neighbor or a stranger walking past our homes, inviting them in to share a meal. And as ships began to arrive, our hospitality adapted, as it did time and time again, as we got more ships and airplanes and bigger airplanes and jet planes. We also had royals who understood the importance of the international community, who leveraged foreign materials and strategic expertise, who signed treaties and traveled to the corners of the world to raise a then independent Hawaii to its place in the family of nations in the late 1800s. So when we add all of this up, we see that the journey, the path to sustainable and regenerative tourism is one that Hawaii is traversing with our ancestors at our back. Now let's flash back to a year ago. In 2019, thought leaders at board tables and kitchen tables alike agreed that we were on an unsustainable trajectory. We welcomed over 10 million visitors in 2019 to our home with a population of only 1.4 million. It's a lot of folks. And if you look past all the hotels and past all the visitors, on the very right-hand side of this photo, you'll see that same mountain we saw a little while ago. That's Le'ahi, or Diamond Head. And those fields of kalo that you saw earlier were growing in the natural springs for which Waikiki is named. Fields that were long ago ripped out, filled in, springs covered, and is now the heart of Hawaii's tourism industry. The pressure wasn't just in Waikiki though. Across the islands, favorite once secluded beaches were being overrun. Traffic in local neighborhoods was becoming unbearable for the people who call those neighborhoods home, for these very same people who power the visitor industry and rely on it. And some communities had started to take visitor regulation into their own hands, like this makeshift roadblock in a rural community on Kauai after a disaster had compromised their ability to host safely. Thankfully, as we approached this 10 million visitor mark, efforts were already underway to protect us from our own successes. In the Aloha Plus Challenge, we had a commitment to achieving environmental and societal goals aligned with the UN SDGs. And in addition to tourism impacts on all of these goals, by virtue of being Hawaii's largest industry, the challenge also included a goal specifically on sustainable tourism, to continue to develop policies and initiatives promoting sustainable business practices that reinvest in the things that make Hawaii, Hawaii. And we measure our progress toward these goals on the Aloha Plus Challenge dashboard, which I trust Kate is dropping the link into the chat at this time. It's alohachallenge.hawaii.gov. And you can see in real time our progress on these goals towards energy, towards food, towards sustainability. And in recognition of their excellent work, last year, Hawaii Green Growth, which is the group serving as the convener of people and groups pursuing those Aloha Plus Challenge goals, was designated as one of 7 United Nations Local 2030 hubs in the world. And today they share, along with Kate's Global Island Partnership, the kuleana of convening the Local 2030 Islands Network. Now, another fortunate movement that was already underway was a movement of conservation and protection being taught to the children in Hawaii's schools, because my generation isn't going to solve this, but the generations coming after me will. And this movement was supercharged by Malama Honua, the worldwide voyage of our canoe Hokulea, which likely touched many of your islands in the Pacific as it journeyed around the world from 2014 to 2017, inspiring countless thousands of people along the way. And at the heart of tourism, the Hawaii Tourism Authority in 2020, early 2020, adopted a strategic plan that adjusted the metrics by which we measure success. Less emphasis was placed on the number of visitors and more emphasis on their contributions to Hawaii's communities. And these 4 pillars are in a very deliberate order, that we must first honor and reinvest and contribute to our natural resources, to our Hawaiian culture that keeps the knowledge of those resources and how to manage them intact, to our community, because if we aren't doing this for our people, why are we doing it? And then, and only then, do we talk about marketing our place to the world. The foundation for all of this at the time was responsible tourism. And not long after the strategic plan was adopted, the global pandemic hit. That's the same stretch of beach in front of the same Royal Hawaiian Hotel, now devoid of visitors. This photo was in, I believe, April, when travel restrictions globally were starting to kick in. And it wreaked economic havoc on our islands because tourism, like many of your homes, was our biggest industry, employing 1 in 7 residents. About 200,000 people in Hawaii count on the visitor industry for their livelihood. And so we are learning to adjust to that. Some people are leaving, some people are able to return home. There's a bunch of interesting dynamics happening. And for the month of October, the statistics just came out, we got 1/10 of the visitors that we got last October. So we're certainly on a very long road to recovery. But understanding that the pause that we had, the pause in visitor arrivals due to this global pandemic, was something that we never had before. Hawaii, every year since the first visitor came, you guys may have met him, Captain James Cook. He was our first visitor. And every year since then, we've gotten more and more and more and more and more, and we've built more and we've welcomed more. We've never had a pause like this. And so it was an opportunity to shift, to refocus. Simon, you mentioned reinvention, reimagining. It was an opportunity to put into practice all of these things we had talked about. Because there was no wind, we could fix the sails. Another interesting that happened during this time was the appointment of the Hawaii Tourism Authority's very first Native Hawaiian president and CEO, a friend of mine, a friend of Kate's, Mr. John DeFries. And he brings with him a lot of perspective. Probably the most important thing that he brought was a simple idea. This value of ma'alama. Ma'alama, to care for, to protect, to defend, to reinvest. He adopted ma'alama as the organizing principle for the work of the Hawaii Tourism Authority. And we hear a lot about the cultural value of aloha, right? And to take it back to a canoe metaphor, if we think of aloha as one hull of the canoe, the sister hull, the other hull, must be ma'alama. Because we have to express our love for this place. We have to express our love for our people through the act of ma'alama. And so going forward in tourism, we're certainly working to encourage that value of ma'alama in all the decisions and all the actions. We understand it's really tough economic times right now. People are ready to get back to work. Visitors would like to come. We got to do it safely, and we might as well do it in a way that advances these priorities, because COVID-19 is a disaster in fast motion. Our changing climate is a disaster in slower motion. I'll end with this real quick, and I'm sorry, because I'm sharing my slides, I can't see my countdown, so I may very well be close to my time.
Yeah, you are.
I wanted to revisit quickly why we do what we do. So this young lady, the young lady on the left, not the young lady on the right, this is my daughter, Kawai Pomaikai. And this was her first international high-level sustainability meeting about a year and a half ago. And this was her yesterday. She's very excited to get a piece of mail sent to her. But she's why I do what I do. Because the choices we make today, I might not see the effects, but she will. And certainly her children will. And so all of this work and all that we do, I would encourage everybody that the strongest tool that we all have is to focus on the people we love, the generations not yet born, and understand the importance of this work because of how it will affect them. So that's all for me. Mahalo nui. It's an honor to be here. And I look forward to hearing the rest of our presenters. Aloha.
Aloha, mahalo, Alihia. That was great, very inspiring, and nice to see baby Kauai. We're going to move to our next speaker, which is Jope Dave Tane Valu, who is the Environmental Planning Advisor under the Environment Monitoring Governance Program at SPREP, one of the hosts of this conference, where he's been for the last 7 years. And he is the team leader for the Environment Planning Unit and provides technical advice and training to SPREP member countries in the area of environment planning and assessment and on the development of national environment plans and strategic plans. So Jope, it's over to you. He's going to talk about the coastal tourism guidelines.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and I must also say thank you to the previous speakers for setting the scene really on a very well-established note this afternoon. Back. And yes, my presentation this afternoon on the theme provided will focus on the guideline called Environment Impact Assessment Guideline called the Coastal Tourism Development.
Jope, sorry,
yes.
sorry. Is your screen, are you sharing your screen? Because we don't see your slides.
Thank you. I'll wait for, can we go back that way? Stop that way. Start. Thank you. Madam Moderator, can we all see that?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, for allowing me to reconnect my presentation this afternoon. I said a while ago, my appreciation to the previous speakers who set the seed for this important industry within the Pacific, that is on sustainable and regenerative tourism in the Pacific, tools for making progress. And this afternoon, I will be presenting on an environment assessment tool that was developed by SPREP in partnership with our development partners called the EIA Guidelines for Coastal Tourism Development. To begin with, colleagues, to define what is sustainable tourism development. And according to the World Tourism Organization, they are tourism that takes full account of its current and future economic, social, and environmental impacts, addressing the needs of visitors, the industry, the environment, and host community. And yes, the previous speakers have been sharing with us the beauty of the environment in a Pacific region, and this has triggered Pacific Island countries in moving forward, developing tourism as an important sector for our region. But it is so good to note that the governments of the day within our Pacific Island countries have put in place proper safeguard systems, such as the guidelines for tourism development on EIA to safeguard these development proposals on tourism. And the question to us now, how is SPREP as a regional organization contributing to sustainable development tourism in the Pacific region? And I like the way Elia said, how SPREP as an organization can care for or to defend good, positive, sustainable tourism in the Pacific region. As required under this SPREP strategic plan, and with the support of each partners, member countries, institutions, and many others, SPREP led the development of these three important environment assessment tools. They are the Strengthened Environment Impact Assessment Guidelines for Pacific Island countries and territories. The second one is Environment Impact Assessment Guidelines for Coastal Tourism Development in the Pacific Island countries and the territories. And the third one, the Strategic Environment Assessment Guideline, which was recently endorsed by SPREP member countries with the support of SPREP partners and member countries. So what are the aims of this environment assessment tool? Simply, they are guidelines to prevent and mitigate undue harm to people and their environment in tourism development process, or for any tourism or any development process. And this afternoon, my talk will focus on the Environment Impact Assessment Guidelines for Coastal Tourism Development in the Pacific region. In 2018, a partnership between SPREP and the South Pacific Tourism Organization, with its member countries and partners, they endorse this guideline. The guideline is to support each members in allowing proper process and decision-making to allow good development once they are completed. And what are the purpose of these guidelines? What are the purpose of these guidelines? Yes, the first one is to increase awareness and understanding of the EIA process across the Pacific region tourism sector. It is very, very important. Understanding the EIA process and its requirement is very important. Nearly all of Pacific Island countries and territories have policies and laws that governs this process. The guideline, colleagues, is aligned to the legal requirement of the EIA process of our countries, which can be easily followed by tourism developers and interested parties. That's purpose number one. And purpose number two, promote best practice EIA for coastal tourism development and assist national and regional authorities with promoting and facilitating a biodiversity inclusive EIA process in marine and coastal areas. This is vital because there has been lots of impacts of coastal tourism development, such as coastal erosion, solid and liquid waste pollution, and these are unhealthy to our surrounding biodiversity. Purpose number three, encourage government agencies and tourism developers to comply with national EIA regulatory frameworks. The guidelines, the purpose of the guideline is to strengthen partnership and relationships amongst the important stakeholders. Very important, working within the requirements of the environment or EIA laws of respective governments. And purpose number four, to support sustainable and resilient development that protects the environmental, social, and cultural assets of coastal environments, which provide a foundation for tourism. Those are the four purposes of these coastal tourism EIA guidelines. And the use of these guidelines, The guidelines is to provide tourism operators and developers with tools and prompts or tips on things to consider to make their development more sustainable. They are used by SPREP and SPTO members. For SPREP, they are using this guideline to raise capacity and train regulators and tourism industries on how to make decisions on future tourism developments. National government agencies, yes, it is required under the law, under the most environmental law, that EIA is legally required for most development activities. For tourism developers, businesses and operators, national tourism associations, customary and private land, and resource owners, members of the civil society, organizations, and local community group. As stated, that EIA process is legally required for development such as tourism development in our region. The environment and planning assessment tools such as the EIA guideline for tourism development are used as guiding tools for our member countries. But not only that, it has also been used, it has also been referred to as a best practice guideline by some of our development partners in terms of infrastructure development. But to add on to that, a guideline has been used by most few of our tertiary institutions in the region to train future regulators and decision makers in the area of environment assessment and planning. And to conclude this presentation, as we continue to build and strengthen our island resilience to the impacts of climate change and sea level rise, the guidelines provide us with an important tool to assist us in making sound planning and informed decisions towards sustainable or regenerative tourism development. I thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you so much. And there's the context for Jope, a really useful tool there, and great to see it and use together, and work happening between SPTO and SPREP, really awesome. We have about 7 minutes, so there is one question in the question answer for you, Melita, which is really, you're complimented that you have a wonderful initiative and presentation, and someone was wondering what the survival rate of mangroves that are being planted is, and is mangrove survival a challenge? If you could spend 1 minute on that. And then for everyone else, I will just ask you to tell us something that you feel you heard throughout this session that kind of either surprised you or inspired you as you're closing, really your closing 1 minute. And then we'll close with Simon kind of closing the framing of this session. So I'll ask Melita to answer the mangrove question.
Sorry, Kate, can you come back with the question?
The question is, what is the survival rate of mangroves that have been planted? Is mangrove survival a challenge in what you're doing?
Well, the mangroves, I think their survival is long. And the challenge, it's long, and we believe that if we take care of them properly, they're gonna go long. But the challenge we're facing now is in terms of mangrove planting. The locals depend on the mangroves, so there are many uses for the mangroves. They use them as building materials. They also use them as gas to gas for cooking. And so the challenge here is trying to help educate them to manage the resources, that they don't overuse them. So it's a challenge of coming up with another option for firewood and building materials that they don't chop the mangroves. And with that, we are coming up with this tourism initiative as a short solution to that problem. So when we create an economic incentive, that's by using tourism as a platform, then they can see income coming in and they will stop chopping the mangroves. because they know that they can benefit from the mangroves. So I hope that answers your question.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I think Nunia can follow up with you by email later as well. So I'm going to ask our next speaker, which is Ilahia, to reflect on something that you thought inspired you or surprised you from the Sustainable Tourism Tools and etc. session.
Sure. Thanks for that, Kate. You know, I think what's inspiring to me is seeing that we're all kind of headed in the same direction, right? We all understand the importance of this. We're all committed. And Maleta, it was beautiful to see what you're doing, because you can have all these big conversations up here, but the stuff doesn't happen without hands touching the dirt, without hands touching the ocean, without putting in that work. All of this big stuff we talk about does not happen. So I really thank you for sharing what you're doing on the ground. And we all, I think sometimes it's easy to get away from that and, just lean on the statistics and the big stuff. I would encourage everybody to kind of get out there and go do something to, as we say, aloha aina, or to love your place. Even if it's just one small thing a day, go and do it, touch the ground, be in your environment. It'll really help you kind of reground the work that you're doing. So mahalo for that.
Mahalo, thank you. And Jope? Oh, sorry, Jope? Oh, Melita, did you want to say? Jope, I'll pass to you. What is something you feel really inspired you from what you've heard?
Thank you, Kate. And I'll refer to the powerful ending remarks by Madam First Lady of Palau, when she stated, "We are all visitors on this planet." And I totally agree to that. And it is really a powerful message. And it links in well to the comment raised by Ilya. It's about time, since we are all visitors to this planet. Let's go down to the ground level and implement and do what we are preaching now for the sake of our future generation. That's all. It's just that powerful message really is an excellent one. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. And Melita, something that you learned or inspired you today?
Me, sorry?
Yes, you, sorry, Melita.
Yeah, well, I think I am very, very encouraged by all the presentations, knowing that I'm doing the right thing. And to make a difference, I need to get down there and start doing something. And that's what I'm already doing. So I want more people on the ground to help support this initiative, and together we can make a difference in promoting sustainable tourism in the Pacific.
Awesome, thank you. And Simon, the final words, over to you.
Well, I found all of the presentations really inspiring, and to get the different perspectives and focus was great. I think for me, what stood out as we were just talking about was the importance of the local scale, the community scale. That's really the coalface, if you like, where visitor and people, locals interact. And what can be done at that local scale is so important in influencing what happens then at a regional, national, and even a global scale. I guess the only other thing I would say, and it's a word of caution, I guess, is that I love the metaphor about, I think, repairing the sails when the wind was gone. We just have to hope that that wind doesn't come back stronger than before after the COVID. And I think that issue of managing the challenges of over-tourism, managing perhaps some of the less sustainable aspects of the tourism industry as we go forward is going to be a really important challenge. And I think this group has really set a very clear direction forward to avoid putting that old wine just in new bottles and to actually have a whole new vintage as we go forward.
Awesome, thank you, Simon. And I'd like to thank everyone for just a wonderful set of presentations. We are finishing on time. If people want to continue interrogating or questioning the speakers, some of them, everyone is invited after this to talk further in the lounge on the platform. I'm really unclear what that is, but someone will tell us. So that's both for people in the audience and also speakers. And I believe this will be available in a range of ways. Thank you very much for the people that helped in the background. And thank you, Meg Ryan from the Nature Conservancy that helped us pull this session together. So thank you, everyone. Look forward to kind of really seeing an impact in the sustainable tourism space in the Pacific and hopefully across the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Mahalo.